Hi, welcome to Growing Resiliency for Aquarium and Zoo Employees. My name is Haley. I am the administrative assistant for GRAZE, and I'm joined by Shannon. And today
Hello.
today we're gonna talk about some individual professional development opportunities that GRAZE is beginning to offer. So Shannon, do you want to kind of walk us through some of these opportunities?
Yes, definitely, Haley. Thank you. So, as we move through some of these services that we've been talking about, and we started with that general awareness and support, now we get to move into the individual professional development and helping to grow each individual in their own space. And some of the courses that we offer are caring for the caregiver, completing the cycle, and the Thriving Animal Professional Workshop. And each one of these works really nicely in tandem with each other as well as separately. So the completing the cycle is usually where we start, and it really talks about stress, how stress impacts us, how we process stress, and some of the tools and strategies we can utilize to really use stress in a more positive way or a more healthy or helpful way. Oftentimes, when we are trying to use tools to mitigate or remove or eliminate or avoid stress, we actually cause more stress. And so, a lot of what we focus on is the science behind it and how we can really use those tools to grow and develop our resiliency. Because unfortunately, stress is going to happen. And there are different types of stress. There's eustress and distress. So, really capitalizing on that eustress and helping process any potential distress. We kind of then roll into our caring for the caregiver, which really focuses on self care or self husbandry and beyond the commercialized version. So, really talking about things that we're familiar with as animal people, our self husbandry, right? So, our good welfare, our food, making sure we have plenty of water, our species specific behaviors, choice and control, and how we weave those into our day to day so they're not an extra task, but really part of our good self care. And we do dig into some emotions and really understanding how emotions impact us and how we process those as part of our self care routine. And then we've got the Thriving Workshop, which really is that next level of professional development. To be honest, it follows the same format as pretty much any other professional development course. The difference is it's created and taught by animal people. So we take into account a lot of the things that I ran into when I took professional development courses was they're made for the corporate world, which is fantastic. However, they don't take into account the sentient beings that also have choice and control and their own agenda sometimes, and how that impacts, maybe your time management or how you can set boundaries, right? So, really taking those into consideration and tailoring that kind of classic model more for our industry and more for the animal professionals. So that's kind of an overview outline of those three main courses that we have.
Perfect. I love that. I love the tailoring to the animal care because I know a lot of keepers, we always want to take care of our animals more than we really want to take care of ourselves.
Yep.
um, can you maybe talk a little bit about why these will be beneficial for organizations to really look into these programs for the individuals?
Definitely. So oftentimes when we are working to support an organization, we approach it just like we would an ecosystem, right? It's really easy to get distracted by the big shiny concepts, like the big team development, which is important. Team development is really important. Uh, Executive leadership development, work culture development. These are all really important. However, just like in an ecosystem, if you're not looking at all the other individuals within that habitat and you miss, say, a keystone species, right? The entire ecosystem can still be potentially in crisis. It can still have the potential of falling apart. And so when we start with the individual levels, now we can start to develop those skills with each person who's within the organization. We can create that common language. We can start to integrate these tools into the practices. So if someone tells you, oh, yeah, so my boundary around this is this, other individuals are going to go, oh, okay, you're setting a boundary, and here's how I can respect it. That then builds into that team cohesion or that overall workplace ecosystem. But we've got to start at each one of us taking back our power and control of our well being. All too often, we want to put all of that responsibility on our leadership, on our workplace. And while they do have an active role, they're also human beings. They're probably going to make mistakes. They're going to get it wrong from time to time. So when we can also be investing in ourselves and our skill sets, now we can show up together and actually have that forward movement instead of almost working against one another. So that's really the major benefit is it starts to get each individual taking care of themselves. It creates that unifying language across the organization, and it helps support the next level of team development and kind of overall work culture development.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I know right now that a lot of services are offered in person and virtual. Can you talk a little bit about which will better suit these services?
So right now, these particular programs, the Thriving Workshop we have offered virtually, and we've done for organizations or kind of general populace, and we try to run that maybe once or twice a year, depending on demand for it. Whereas the caring for the caregiver and completing the cycle, at this moment in time, we are offering in person for organizations only. And a lot of that is because the content that we are talking about can be very activating. You know, we dive into certain emotions like shame and guilt and how they might show up for us. We dive into what are some of our stress activators and how are we coping or responding to them. And we want to make sure that we are maintaining psychological safety and that we are at no time doing harm. And so at this moment in time, we do offer them in person only for that reason, because of the deep dives. And we have seen that be beneficial. There has been plenty of conversations where we have clearly activated either at the team or department level or on the individual space. And because we're on site, we're able to follow up and have those one-on-one support sessions to help them work through that or help them identify a professional who can walk them through some of the things that were brought up in our discussion. Kind of like we talked about in our awareness and support, pretty much all of us are carrying around some form of trauma, whether they're covert or overt traumas, they're there. And when we have these conversations, sometimes we do activate and bring awareness to those old traumas, and that can be really hard. So we are working on developing some of that content into maybe a virtual setting where we can still maintain that psychological safety. Maybe it's not quite as deep a dive, but gets people that kind of taste, if you will, of the content, start to get some of those skills, and then we can bring the full program into their organization in person. But we're still kind of developing and picking and choosing what parts based on the feedback that we're getting from the organizations we're working with to really figure out what could that look like so that we can make it more available to more people. But at this time, yeah, it's in person and mostly offered to organizations.
Perfect. And if I want to learn more about all of these courses that are being offered, where can I go?
So if you go to our website, zoomentalhealthsupport.com, there is a page to contact us for information, and it will link you to a sign up genius. So you can actually pick your time that you want to talk to us. And we usually have about 30-minute sessions where we can provide you with that information. We want to know a little bit about your organization and your goals. And then we can align those services with what your goals and kind of where your organization is at. And that's probably the easiest. Otherwise, if you really want to, you can also email us at GRAZEE. Yes, there are two E's, all lowercase, at zoomentalhealthsupport.com. And we can set up a schedule it that way as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon.
Awesome. Thank you, Haley.